This is Shannon Plowman Potts. I'm with the Young County Museum of History and Culture, July 16th, 2021. And we are here with Brendan Anderson from the city manager of Graham. And we first want to find out where you were born, what's your birth date, so we can kind of
Sure.
have a comparison.
Brandon Anderson. I was born and raised in Southeast Kansas. I was born April 22nd, 1973. Moved to Texas when I graduated from Kansas State University. Was in extension for a little short time, but then became a city manager, and I was in Haskell before I moved here to Graham.
Okay, that explains how you got here to Graham. What did your parents do for work that might have influenced you?
Early on, my parents were involved in a family farm, and then later in life, they both ended up driving school buses for 30 years.
Okay, answer that. Are you married?
I am married. Wife Penny. We've been married for 21 years this September.
Okay, how many kids you got?
One of our own. His name's Cade. He's 19. Just graduated from Graham High School. And then I have two stepsons. She had two boys when we got married, Colton and Jim Young.
Okay, where are they located?
Colton and his wife Leah live in Florida. They're with the Air Force and stationed Eglin Air Force Base, not far from Destin, Florida. So Penny and Kate are going on vacation to go see him and visit family next week. And then my middle child, Jim, and his wife, Jamie, are in Abilene.
Okay.
And our grandson, Grayson. I better recommend,
Yes.
or better say that, or Penny will get mad.
Yes.
So,
how old's Grayson?
Grayson turned a year in November.
Perfect.
So he's growing up faster than we want him to.
Okay, so now talk about illnesses. What was the worst illness you can remember you ever had?
Growing up, I somehow acquired measles my junior year. It was great for my physique. I actually could handle a case of the measles now. I lost 30 pounds in my junior year of high school.
So had you not had a vaccination for measles?
I'm pretty sure that I had, but I don't know if it was a different strain. Myself and another individual in our FFA group got it, we believe, from state FFA contest.
Where was the state FFA contest?
It was in Manhattan, Kansas.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. What was the worst virus illness of mass scale that you've experienced, or that your parents have experienced that they might have told you about?
I can't remember my parents ever telling me much about any mass, maybe a flu, a bad flu season. But I think myself, the history that we've been involved in is probably just the coronavirus that we've dealt with.
Got it. Did you get a smallpox vaccination?
I did not.
Yeah, you didn't have to, and no polio vaccination, anything like that.
I think that was all eradicated. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not as old as I look. But.
No. It's part of the questions. Were you a caregiver for anyone else who had been ill in the past?
No.
Okay, that's a blessing. When did you first hear about COVID?
I started hearing some COVID-19 stories around pre-Christmas. Really? Overseas, you started hearing about some of it. Never thought much of it.
Okay.
At the time.
At that point, or even a little bit after, where did you get most of your information about the virus?
Well, where it really became fast and furious from an information standpoint was about mid-March. Okay. We had started hearing some stories, a few more stories, United States related. I think there was a few cases first on the West Coast, and then a few showed up on the East Coast, but you're talking about February of 2020, and then obviously March 2020, a lot of things changed.
So initially, did you hear about it on TV, or was it through being a city manager, you got that kind of information?
No, we were still hearing it just from the news, just like everyone else at that point.
When did you start to worry about it?
This may sound bad. It didn't really hit home with me until our first individual with the city of Graham was tested, which was about March 20th of 2020. We were one of the first entities that had a individual get tested. That test actually came back negative, but that was kind of the eye-opening moment. We stock showed, and so we were when it first broke, when the NBA player, started tested and the NBA shut down, it was all kind of that March 16th kind of number. We were actually headed to our layover spot where we would camp out before Houston and Austin with our pigs on the way down there. A good place to stop, though. I was in West Texas, so we were able to eat good kolaches on the way. But that's where we got the news that the Houston Livestock Show had been canceled.
Okay, so y'all weren't there yet.
No, but we did go on to College Station. We turned around and came back. Shortly after that, they were having a show in Lubbock. I mean, a lot of people scrambled and made a show happen. We were actually, it was called the Alternative. They got it put together, and we had to show livestock. We showed hogs in Lubbock, Texas, from 7 o'clock one evening until about 9 o'clock the next morning. They made us show straight through because Lubbock had just ordered a shutdown issue, and we had to be out of the barn by 7 o'clock that next night.
Wow. So how did that affect y'all with your hogs? Couldn't show them at later shows. How did that affect?
Oh, obviously it was, heartbreaking. But we knew, and now knowing, a large group together probably wasn't the best of ideas, and it was tough. My son was in FFA and active, and a lot of those events got canceled that year. And for those kids, whether it be an FFA event, whether it was a stock show project, or whether it just be sports in general, that's who I really felt for, is those kiddos that lost a year basically of all their events that they'd worked so hard to do.
Yeah. Okay. What did you do initially to protect yourself?
Well, like I say, and I was telling that story to get to the point. I'd stayed up all night helping with that show, and that's when I got the phone call that said, "Hey, we have an employee that they're testing." So instead of going to the motel and taking a nap like I had planned to do, I told my son, "Hey, we need to go home." So he drove me home. We drove through about 3 thunderstorms that day. Got home, I immediately put into effect an immediate policy change about how we would go day to day with staff.
With the city of Graham?
With the city of Graham.
Okay.
Yeah. And implemented those changes at that point. Basically, we went from our normal routine to we would meet in much smaller groups. We would wear masks and not congregating in past our departments. So
how long did it take for that to get into effect with the smaller groups, with the wearing masks? Was that pretty immediate?
With one of our individuals getting tested, I was really pleased with city employees and how seriously they took it. And immediately we went into the mode where the parks department would meet in one place, so you only had 5 or 6 guys meeting in this group instead of 30 or 40 for a morning meeting there at Public Works Department. So all of our departments established a place where they would meet in the mornings, get their daily routine, and go from there.
What did you feel like to be in a position of making decisions that would affect the safety of others? Was it a little more nerve-wracking?
I guess it was, obviously we were all venturing down a path that none of us had been on. And I mean, everything in life, hindsight's easy. So I hope we learned a lot from it. But because there were so many unknowns, I mean, the steps we were making obviously were paths we'd never gone down. I immediately was concerned about, where I get concerned about is, we work for the citizens, but now you're trying to tell your citizens what they need to do. And I think that really gets to be a scary path. And so that's where I felt the most responsibility and concern was, hey, we're changing people's way of lives with what's been mandated by obviously the federal government, but then by the governor of the state of Texas. We kind of relied on his orders then for the next 2 to 3 months, really heavily, and it was a very challenging time.
What steps in your official capacity did you implement to prevent, well, you already said that, you did the small groups. Were these steps taken in phases or just pretty much immediately? Or was it as the mandates came in?
No, we took that action immediately.
Okay.
And then obviously they started adding, hey, this is the best practice. This is the best practice. I don't know if we immediately wore masks. I think we did. I'd have to look back, but we started, getting masks and like everybody struggling with finding PPE. And so, it was fast and furious, but we immediately initiated all of those at one time.
I'm kind of going to go off script a little and ask, how much pushback did you receive initially and then in the middle of it? From the community.
From the community, I've got to say, I think, direct pushback, we didn't hear from a lot of the community members. I think everyone realized we were in a different time and didn't know exactly how to react or how to respond the common analogy I gave is, and especially 6 months into this, is we have three groups of people that we're trying to send a consistent message to. And those three groups of people, one group is still underneath their bed scared about the virus. The other group understands there's a virus out there, but also wants to live their life. And then you always had another group that said, this is political, this is man-made, this is the conspiracy theorist out there. So it was really hard to foster a consistent message and stay consistent with our group and do what was right. And I guess that's what I still struggle with even today. I think this is a pandemic, and we all saw people die from it, and we know how serious it was. But I still, to this day, don't see a concerted enough effort being done by our leadership. And when I say our leadership, I'm talking about federal government, I'm talking about our health professionals. We should have more answers by now. We should have more best practices by now. We should have, to me, we can find out everything we want. And I'm trying hard to dance around because I'm supposed to be an apolitical figure, but unfortunately we continue to keep this in our back pocket, whether it be Republican or Democrat, for political use. And I don't think, and unfortunately, I'm just enough of that conspiracy theorist too, to think we may not ever know the truth about this, and that's frustrating.
That's a good point. Were there any procedures or protocols that were in place prior to this to handle an emergency like a pandemic? Was there anything really?
General staff-wise, probably not. Obviously we have police and fire through their training. I know they're taught in different levels of emergency management training. All of them have to go to a certain degree of that to handle emergency situations, whether it be a chemical spill or whether it be an explosion, or I know a lot of those scenarios involve, a pandemic similar to this, and they've done some workshops, but for the most part, past police and fire, probably not many of our staff.
Okay. Do you feel like your procedures that you did end up were implemented successfully? What would you have done differently now that we have this point of view?
For the most part, they went. I think we did the responsible thing as a city and as employees of the city. I know there's another question coming on down the line about
the knowledge,
whether you got it and whether you had it. I think there was a lull period where everybody kind of got a little lax, and I know a lot of my staff did. We 2 or 3 different times had to send out, reminders. Hey, we've got to tighten up the cinch. We've got to go back to, really wear your mask, take the hard line. And unfortunately, one of them was my mistake. I mean, I've traveled and got outside. I'd actually went to we still tried to keep some semblance of our normal life. Well, my son was still stock showing. We were still buying some pigs for him to stock show, and we went to a pig sale in Oklahoma. Thought we were being safe. Whether that's where I got it or not, I don't know. But I did feel bad on a Monday morning. Felt like I had a sinus headache like I always get, or a sinus infection like I'd always get when I'd go to a stock show and be in a dusty barn. And I got back and I called Dr. Martin and I said, hey, can because I didn't want to go to the hospital. I sure didn't want to go there. That's probably where I was going to get COVID. So I called him and I said, "Hey, can you call me in an antibiotic for? I think I got a sinus infection. Had them forever. No, you need to come get tested." And I'd been to City Hall for about 2.5 hours that morning, and so I went home and got tested. Obviously, when you get tested, you're under a quarantine protocol. My family all got tested. I say all. My son and I both got tested. My wife started experiencing the same symptoms we did the next day. She never did go get tested, but we knew that, and so we ended up at home for 2 weeks with COVID.
Did that shut down City Hall?
It actually did for a day or two because me being lax and not following the protocol tight enough, I brought it back to City Hall, and all of my staff ended up experiencing COVID.
All the staff did?
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Shut it down. So how difficult was that returning after having the City Hall completely shut down? Had it ever been shut down before?
We ended up shutting down for about a week during that because of just the transition of people getting in and out of quarantine protocol. I guess it kind of messed with my head a little bit. I mean, the responsibility that you feel like you probably should take because, these people are my employees and they, I'm supposed to be doing what's right and setting the right example. And I probably failed them through that, but I felt really bad. One of my employees and then one of my employees' spouses both ended up in the hospital. And so that was a little difficult to deal with.
Okay. Had City Hall ever been shut down before for anything that you know of?
Other than holidays, I wouldn't know. I mean,
Okay.
most of the time we try to stay open.
All right. Do you know anybody personally that died from COVID-19?
The only personal experience I've got is in December. My mother had to go in for an emergency procedure, and while she was in there and dealing with health problems, she contracted COVID and passed from COVID.
Oh my. Okay. The next question is, did that change your opinion of severity? But I think you had that changed months prior.
Yeah, it was, and that goes back to those three different groups, and it was hard to be, to hold that line and tell everybody a consistent message. I mean, I was in the group in the middle. I knew that there was a COVID out there. I knew it was affecting and really hit people that were older and had kind of some underlying symptoms or underlying conditions that might be affected worse. And that goes back to the bigger picture. I mean, you go back to the conspiracy theorist, how many people died of the flu, how many people, we didn't have any of those. But I almost feel like COVID piggybacked on everything. If you were a little bit down because of the flu, COVID came in and took the brunt and made you either much sicker than you would have been with the flu, or you may have perished because of that. And I'm still convinced that to a degree that's what happened with my mom. She got in there and was fighting, an illness and had to have an emergency surgery. And when your white blood cell count's down, I mean, it kind of attacked. And that's what I wish we knew more of is because there's too much of that information out there that all of a sudden COVID takes the place of all of these other things that we've had for years. There should be a line that should say, okay, COVID came in, and of course we called them all COVID deaths, whether they were or not, I don't know. But we continue to learn a lot. I just wish we knew more.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go back to, so when COVID all started and everything, how did that affect your daily life? Coming to work, going home, spending time with your family?
Well, and city manager, I mean, nobody really likes a city manager anyway. But I really, basically became kind of a recluse. I mean, I think we all did. I think, you went home. Luckily I had Amazon Music on my my phone. I could go out and sit on the front. We sit on our front porch most of the summer, every evening. I guess the neat thing, I mean, in today's lifestyle, I always think, how did we ever have time to go do this or do that? Because we've all become so, we're all busy, and we never have time for anything. But last summer we had time for stuff. I remember one of the first weekends after it hit, probably like right into April weekend. Penny and Cade and I, our small family, we just loaded up in the truck. We knew that would be safe, and we just drove. And we actually drove. I had made a map out of historical markers, and we decided we were going to go look at historical markers. And we went from Graham to Alney to Seymour, back over to Knox City. My wife's family is buried at some of her family's buried at Knox City, so we went to the cemetery and went back to Haskell, where we were from, and then made our way back to Graham. But we probably saw 20 or 25 historical markers that day. So try to make the best of it.
Yeah. So that kind of led into one of the ones about, I can't find it out now, did it cause a depression or something? What blessings did you see from the opportunity of not congregating, I guess you'd say?
It was nice not to be busy all the time, and find more time for family, and whether we wanted to be around each other or not, we were. And
were you able to spend time with your mother during that time, or was it pretty
actually
much stay away?
No, we none of us got to go visit because of the restrictions with hospitals.
Was she in a rest home?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No, she had went. Her and my dad had been trying to play it safe and stay at home, and obviously everything is locked down in Kansas just like it is here. And I don't remember. Actually, my dad spent about a stint of 30 days in the hospital in probably September. He got out and was feeling better, and then my mom.
Did he have COVID, or was it
no,
another?
He never had COVID, and never. I say that he never did test either, so he might have been a little hard-headed like me, but.
So, did you experience any unemployment during this time? And this is from your staff. Was there some of your staff that you ended up having to do unemployment? Did they have to?
We didn't
furlough.
We didn't do anything. We didn't change anything at the city.
Okay.
For the most part, we actually shut. Okay, I told you we were down about a week with the illness. Mm-hmm. At City Hall, and that was in October. But we did also immediately close down City Hall when the pandemic first started. We were shut down for about, I can't remember exactly how much. We were taking payments online and mail them in. So we were shut down at City Hall for a time, but always kept all the staff employed. There were a few departments that I struggled with, and I actually visited with the mayor at the time, and I was like, "What do you think?" Auditorium. Obviously, we weren't able to have events at the auditorium. The arena, we weren't able to have events at the arena. And what I decided to do, and what I recommended, or asked the mayor, and he concurred. Let's keep them on. Let's not furlough them. Number one, it's hard to find good employees. But number two, you can do projects that maybe you kick down the road and haven't been, especially at the arena. There was a lot of opportunity to do some things out there. So we did not, the city of Graham did not furlough anybody or we didn't see any staff shortages during this time.
So I know y'all moved into a new building, and I can't remember if it was prior to or after the pandemic, but I noticed y'all have glass, you have speakers. Was that implemented because of COVID, or had y'all already planned to do that?
We actually, that was already in the plan, and I had already spent a few sleepless nights worried about how the community would take. One thing that worried me about our old city hall is how wide open it was. It was a blessing, but a concern. And where it was a concern was for the safety of my employees. I mean, in today's time, it's scary times. We're in Graham. Graham's a safe community, but you just never know anymore. And so I always wanted to keep, employee safety paramount, Also, citizen safety as they come in, and where I'm getting at with that is ADA compliance. We weren't always ADA compliant. So we had made that decision, and actually that glass was put in for security reasons to start with. It's actually bulletproof glass. Might be a little bit overkill, but I'd rather be overly cautious. And also, we made that area where all of our employees can kind of be back there and secure, and the door's locked, and so nobody could have ingress or egress there. So we did it because of that. But COVID came in, and now everybody's like, "Oh well, gosh, because of COVID they put these in." But I honestly was concerned because you always worry about what the public's going to think about things. I was really concerned about how they were going to view us going from big wide open area to a closed in partition with a little slot and the microphone. So I guess that's one of the positives that came out of COVID, I guess.
Did the city have to take out any PPP loans? Could they?
We did not. The city did not. The shuttered venue opportunity we looked into for the arena. And I know the chamber was able to benefit from some PPP funds, but we did not end up pursuing that for the arena.
Okay.
We actually did get quite a few emergency supplies and finances sent our way through the federal government in those first couple of.
So what kind of supplies?
Well, actually, it was just cash. They sent cash to us.
I thought maybe they sent masks.
we documented what we purchased, which most of it was PPE equipment, but and then we also documented, salaries and keeping our employees employed.
Okay.
So,
do you think the government gave out money too freely?
If I'm being honest, I'd probably have to say yes. I think the checks and balances weren't there. I don't guess I've ever experienced just waking up and finding money in my account. It was a little bit crazy of time, and I understand why the first payment was done. I think there was a lot of concern about were people struggling financially, and I know there's a lot of that goes on in this world. But I think the further we got down into it, and it kind of looks like we probably may have, and not just the payments, but also the other things that were put in place, the unemployment benefits, the extension of those unemployment benefits, and how that's affected our workforce. I think now there's a stigma of, gosh, I can, and even if it's not COVID related, I think people could still have COVID concerns and want to stay home, and I would understand that. But I think so many of them now are just saying, gosh, with this extension of unemployment, I can just stay on it and not go back to work. And that's got to be a direct ramification of why everyone around here can't find anybody to work.
So I know you kept all your employees you had. I'm still going off script again. You able to keep all the employees you have, but did you need to have you needed to try to find new employees through this? And if so, has it been difficult?
The last couple of months we've struggled finding employees to come to work. We've got an opening right now in waterline maintenance. May have a possible another one coming open. Now we've got a couple of retirements that are getting ready to happen in the fire department, and it concerns me to a degree. Hopefully we'll be able to find, 2 qualified applicants for that. We're down about 3 members at the police department. So, everybody's fighting for employees right now.
Did you suffer any losses, such as personal assets, occupation, financial obligations? Did you have any problems?
No.
Did you take up any new hobbies other than sitting on the porch?
No, not really. I mean, my son and I, we had all that free time, so we really dove into his livestock projects for this last senior year. And then he kept me a little occupied. We applied for scholarships and different things. So, kind of, I guess, had more time to do that.
So where did he end up going to college?
He ended up getting a livestock judging scholarship to go to Blinn College.
Okay.
Also had a very successful FFA career and we just got back from state FFA convention where he received a Houston scholarship for $20,000. So
that is fantastic.
Mom and Dad are very happy.
Yes, yes. So he will be staying there, won't have to do just online.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you get vaccinated?
I did get vaccinated.
When?
I got vaccinated. I thought it was a date I would never forget. I guess it was this past year, about the first part of March, because it was right before we were headed to the stock shows,
Okay.
to Houston and Austin.
Okay, so 2021, March 2021.
Yeah. I actually I wasn't eligible for one for the longest time,
okay.
because
You're too healthy?
Well, no underlying conditions and age, and but I got the Johnson and Johnson,
Okay.
so one shot is all I got. Of course, now I keep hearing that, I don't know, I may start glowing next week. I don't know, but
did your wife receive the shot at the same time?
we both got J&J at the same time. Yeah.
Okay. What do you feel is the most important lesson that you, from this experience of living through, have gained?
Well, and I still get frustrated with people that just seem like they're not happy about anything. I mean, they almost spend their life being unhappy, and they want you to be unhappy. But after watching and again earlier, I talked about the kiddos and what they missed out on, and knowing that something like this could happen and easily happened, and it did happen. And so much of what we just took for granted, the opportunity to go and do and whatever we wanted to do in this United States that's free, were taken away, and not necessarily taken away. I think everyone understood at the time why it was important, but we realized how things can be, affected, and we had a great event at Fort Belknap. Crawfish and cannons this year. I mean, the weather was perfect, and I mean, it was just a great event. And I heard one person, a friend of mine, that was a little grumpy because the line he was standing in was a little long. And I said, but isn't it nice to be able to stand in line? I said, you're right beside these other people. You don't have a mask on. We're kind of trying to get back to normal, and we were at that time. We're getting back now what I think is normal, and so it's nice to. Definitely don't want to take anything for granted anymore.
Do you feel like the risk is over?
I know there's other variants out there, and I hear. The other thing I stopped doing during this time, I'd sit on my porch and listen to music, but I stopped watching darn near every bit of news. I don't know. I think it goes back to. I saw a funny meme, or it was a little deal. It says, back in the day, there was a guy that just read the news, and his name was Walter Cronkite. And wouldn't it be neat if we could just get the news instead of versions of or opinions of? And that's what, I mean, I've lost a lot of faith in, I can't say government, because ultimately that's who we're accountable to, but I've lost a lot of faith in our government at Washington. I've lost a lot of faith in our news media. Both sides. I just don't think that's right to go either conservative or liberal and report what you want. I think we've got to get back to, and the divide anymore is worse than it's ever been. I mean, it used to, you could draw a line in the sand and you could agree to disagree, and we don't do that anymore. It's either my opinion or your opinion, and I'm right or you're right, or usually it's I'm right and you're wrong, and that's not how we're going to be able to sustain. And I'll often, as a city manager, if I had that opinion and worked with people in that manner, I know I wouldn't be a city manager anymore. I mean, I'd be looking for a job, but I know where to go. I guess I can go to Washington and find one. So,
in your opinion, are we prepared for another pandemic or epidemic? Do you think we're prepared, we're ready, we could handle it again?
I think we're all aware that it could happen again. It's going to be interesting to watch over the next couple of months as we head back into the fall and we start seeing COVID cases or flu cases or go back up, and how things will be handled. I think the one thing I have learned, or I feel like I've learned just from the information I can gather, is mask or no masks, groups or no groups. I mean, it's out there, and it's still the responsibility of you and an individual to kind of take care of yourself. And I know we're going to have some spikes here and there, but I think as a world, as an economy, I think we realized how detrimental it can be if we try to lock things down. And I just hope we've learned, and that goes back to what I referenced earlier. I wished we'd learned more. I wish there was more good, accurate information out there.
So, off the record again, off the script again, do you keep your hands washed as much as you did 6 months ago or 9 months ago?
Well, I'm getting lax in that, but yeah, I've learned more personal hygiene in the last year than I knew before, for sure. So,
do you feel other generations can learn from the experience through recorded history, and how would you compare it to the written accounts?
well, and it's funny. I mean, I know you guys are working towards a museum, and we were walking through there, and Tony and I were just talking about how, at City Hall, I've purposely designed it with color pictures because to me, black and white's really old, and I love black and white pictures, but I want to decorate our new City Hall with color pictures of iconic areas of Graham. And I just envision one day where very little is going to be written down, very little is going to be documented, very little will be in picture. It'll all be digital, or it'll all be visual, and so, and unfortunately, this generation, they get everything from their phones. I mean, if they can't look it up on their phones, I mean, the other day I heard a little deal. It's kind of a snippet deal where all they do is it's a website, and all you do is listen to snippets of history and learn history. I mean, that's just where we come. Everybody wants their information, I mean, immediately, and so there's going to be a time when nobody's going to take time out of their personal time to sit down and read something. It's going to have to be visual. It's going to have to be seen. So I think what you guys are doing with this is going to be the wave of the future.
Okay, I think that's all the questions I have. We sure do appreciate you coming and taking the time for this, and I do think it will be a benefit for the generations to come.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank y'all for asking me.